Testing. 1, 2. All right. Hey, oddball. How's how's Haley doing today? Is the sound all right? I had to fix it, and the program was fighting me to get it started. Um, I had kind of a topic in mind today. Um, I'm not sure if I should broach it or not. It's probably going to end up being a rant, and it probably won't do me much good. Thanks, Haley. How's that rope fish tank coming? Did you figure out what you're going to do with the dirt around the top of it? um, I Several things here lately have caused me to think about the topic of balance. Um, Balance is something that's really important in our fish tanks. It's important that we as fish keepers find a way. Awesome. It's important that we as fish keepers find a way to balance our fish keeping with our real lives. Nothing can cause more stress than going overboard one way on getting too many tanks, spending too much money for our spouses that are not fish keepers or that are not fish lovers. You know, a lot of us are married to very supportive people that encourage us in ways, but a lot of people are married to a spouse that's not really interested so much in fish keeping, not nearly as much as the fish keeping person is. So it's important. Balance is important even in the way. Thanks for stopping in, Daryl. Even if you got to bounce, man, I understand. It's important that we as fish keepers find a way to reach balance with with our real lives, with our lives outside of fish keeping. And I know sometimes that's a oxymoron that we're basically fish keepers and that's what we do is keep fish and everything else can come what may, but that's not really the truth. We all have lives. We all have spouses or families or people that are in our lives, or most of us do. Obviously, there are some people that are semi-isolated in their fish keeping, but most of us need to find a way to balance out the amount of time that we spend fish keeping and the amount of time that we spend investing in the real world. If you just sit and watch YouTube videos all day long, you're never going to go outside and do the important things that are required to go outside. Now, there's thousands of us on YouTube. Hey, Terry's Tropical Tanks, welcome to the stream. Hey, Twin City Guppies, welcome to the stream. I've been okay. Getting old sucks. There's not much other way to put it. I've discovered naps, and naps have messed up my sleeping schedule pretty badly here lately. So sometimes I don't know whether I'm coming or going or getting up or going to bed, but I've been doing all right. Haley says my biggest balance issue is when we are out together, I'm very distracted by nature. Well, that's a good thing, Haley. it's a good thing that you have learned through your fish keeping to understand the relationship between nature and what goes on in your fish tanks. And that's another place that we need to have balance. You know, the Buddhist terminology for balance is, and many of the Far Eastern spiritualities is yin and yang. And we need very much to have a balance between yin and yang in our fish tanks. And if you go out and study nature, you will be able to observe the balance in nature, how nature manages to balance out the situation that the fish are living in, how the temperature balances out, how the quality of the water balances out. When the yin and yang is made of dark and light. There's two movements in the yin and yang symbol, and one is darkness and one is light. And you can look at that as one is negativity and one is positivity. You could look at it as one is dark energy and one is light energy. And in the Buddhist way of thinking, both of those energies come from the same place. Each of us have dark and light energy within us. And it is basically the same energy. It comes from the same place. So if the dark energy is 3/4 of the circle, then we're not balanced. Our dark energy is far outpacing the light energy, and we are not balanced. Like in nature, when the dry season comes, that dark energy of the dry season, the heavy evaporation in the water, the lowering of water and water quality, that dark energy is taking over the entire circle until the rainy season comes, and then all of a sudden there's a flood of new water. The lakes and streams swell, and the light energy pushes against the dark energy until it's 3/4 of the circle. And neither one of those is good. It's part of nature. It's part of how nature causes its own balance by the dark energy and the light energy swinging against each other. But when a pleco whisperer, a fish tropic, welcome to the stream, man. When the dark energy is 3/4 of the circle, there isn't balance. And when the light energy is 3/4 of the circle, there isn't balance. There needs to be balance in nature. And these two forces continually work against each other to cause a balance until there's a generalized term, balance, in the yin and yang, in the dark and in the light energy. And it's at that balance point that we reach, that fish reach, a place where they can thrive. Yes, that heavy light energy, when all the new rains are coming and everything's flooding, all of that creates a great deal of new food supply and causes breeding. But the truth is that nature balances it back out again. The rains slow down, the waters recede back to their normal banks, and then there is a period of time where it is in balance. And it is when it is in balance that most of the good, thriving growth, those kinds of things goes on in nature. And it's the same way with us. we all have dark energy in us. We all have light energy in us. It's when those two things are in balance that we are much closer to where we need to be to get things done that we need to do in our lives. So if if you see fish keeping as light energy, if fish keeping is 3/4 of the circle, then something's out of balance. And I'm not trying to say that you need to be both good and evil. I'm trying to say that when you maintain a balance in your lives, in your family, in your fish tanks, and even in nature, when we as a race, as a quote, quote, humanity, destroy nature faster than it can recover, when we are attacking nature, that dark energy is much more prevalent in the circle than the light energy is. We are out of balance on the negative or the dark side of things because we are actively destroying the nest we live in. It's not like we can go somewhere else. But what I'm saying is we need to be more in balance as a species with the planet that we live on. We need to be not heavy dark energy and not too heavy light energy. We need to have a balance going forward with how we treat this planet that we live on and that all of these other species. So, this is an issue that will win me some support and will cause me to lose a lot of support too.
Well, don't you think that most fish keepers are more in tune with nature and want to keep it rolling along as it is than most people?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's true. My wife is saying that fish keepers on the whole are much more in tune with what's going on. Hey Pam, welcome to the stream. Fish keepers on the whole are much more in tune with what's going on in nature. And because of that, we need to be heavy on the light side of the yin and yang as it pertains to the world around us, as it pertains to the destruction of habitat across the world. Yes, I think that's so. But there are a myriad of other ways that this yin and yang descriptor that I'm using can work against us and for us in fish keeping. There are a lot of people out there on the internet. There are a lot of people out there on YouTube. We all know the fish fam. We all know how many differing ideas and opinions there are out there. If we, and part of what's bringing this up to me is I'm starting to notice a lot of PC, politically correct treatment of how forums are handled on the internet now. The idea that someone is being negative, that they're out of balance with dark energy in that yin and yang, in the situation of interpersonal relationships on the internet or websites or stuff like that. If I mean, this is a very complex subject. It is not to say that I in any way endorse hateful behavior. It's not to say that I endorse personal attacks. It's not to say that I endorse I'm better than you are. All those things are not the same thing as what I'm describing as positive and negative behavior on a website, on a live stream, on a forum, any of those kinds of places. If you are just out to stir up trouble, if you're just a hacker or someone that intends only to cause trouble, then that's not the same thing as what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is for me to be concerned about the setup that I see you having and seeing issues with it, and for me to offer a suggestion to you that can be construed as a negative statement, that is not what I consider the dark energy in the yin and yang circle taking over 3/4 of the circle. Now you can make the case that by me saying, well, I really think you need to do this, I like your setup, but I really think you need to do this, you can say that that's my dark energy taking over space of the light energy. I can't discount that. I can't argue with that. But what I will say is that a great many things in this world are based on what our motivations are. What is my motivation for telling you that I think you have a problem with your setup and that I want you to succeed in what you are doing? And I think, wrongly or rightly, because I'm very capable of being wrong, but I think that you need to do this or that to your setup to make it better in the sense of your fish's ability to thrive or survive. I just really want to rant and rave when people tell me that I have to be politically correct and can't offer constructive criticism about a setup, about a situation, not intending to hurt a person, not intending to make them feel belittled, not intending to make them feel like they are somehow less than I am, because believe me, I make lots of mistakes, and I am just as likely to accept constructive criticism as I am to give it. If somebody comes on here and says, Dwayne, you suck, well, that may be true, but that's not really constructive criticism. That doesn't have the motivation of helping me. And I think it's very important what our motivation is, and that can very well be the balance between dark energy and light energy, is that, yes, the dark energy is surging because I'm saying something that can be construed as negative, and perhaps Fish Tropic wants to know, yeah, but why do I suck? Well, I suck for a lot of reasons, Fish Tropic. I'm old. I'm set in my ways. I don't give a crap anymore what people think sometimes, and I say what's on my mind because I figure I've lived this long and I've earned my right to say what I think. And KG says, Dwayne, you suck on the other end of a tube to start a siphon. Gary don't carry no more. I hope you guys can understand what I'm getting at here. Why it is that I'm feeling a need to react to a PC wave that I see hitting YouTube and FishTube and doing some damage in how we interact with each other and how we are able to offer each other advice. If a forum is only going to allow me to say positive things in the sense of, oh, I love your setup, if there is a problem with that setup, if this person is asking for help with a problem, I don't know how I can offer them advice without skirting negative talk, without causing the moderators to feel like I'm being negative when really what I'm trying to do is help. Now, a lot of that may be my own failing in being unable to express myself in such a way that makes it clear, but I don't want to spend 30 lines telling someone how I'm only trying to help and then offer them advice. They won't ever get to the advice. They'll give up in the middle of me explaining why what I'm telling them. A mountaintop fish. Anyway, this is something that's been on my mind lately. You know, a lot of people say that our universities, which used to be a hotbed of free speech and a hotbed of new thinking, new ideas, places of higher learning, are now becoming PC towers where no one can say anything that's not politically correct. VB23 says all of his minnows are outside in his pond. There's 12 of them, and hopefully they go nuts. That sounds great, VB, and welcome to the stream, Mountaintop Fish. I just want to try to push back against the idea that I can't offer you advice because me offering advice to someone is going to be construed in a negative way and is therefore going to be blocked or stopped by a moderator. I don't know how we help people without offering constructive criticism. That doesn't mean that I'm trying to make that person feel bad about themselves. I'm not trying to shame them. I mean, I'm fully capable of trying to shame people. Heaven knows in this political climate, shaming people is, we're there. But I rail against the idea that I cannot offer someone advice without it being construed as negative criticism, with there not being any room for positive criticism, for constructive criticism, for me to offer a piece of advice that may well make that person, face slap and say, why didn't I think of that? That's so simple. I'm an idiot. I couldn't think of that. Is that negative? Is it negative that someone has an epiphany because of some constructive criticism that I've offered and learns to keep their fish better? No, that's not negative. It's a end result positive. So I don't want my chat, my channel, sorry, I don't want my channel to be a place where you don't feel like you can offer constructive criticism. Now, if you're just here to cause trouble and to uh, cause a ruckus, then yeah, my moderators will shut you down. But I don't want people to be Fish Tropic says mistakes and debate is what the world was built around. Yeah, I don't know how we move forward without mistakes and debate or constructive criticism and even non-constructive criticism. It's, if things get out of balance one way, it's the duty of those on the other side of the issue to try to balance it back again. Not if they're just doing it to be hateful, not if they're just doing it to cause misery, but to actually offer constructive criticism is never really a bad thing. As long as your motivation, every time you're going to say something, if you check your motivation and say, why am I really saying this? Am I trying to make myself look great? Well, that's the wrong motivation. Am I trying to disrupt this forum? Well, that's the wrong motivation. Am I trying to help someone and help their fish in the process? To me, on YouTube, that's a proper motivation. Now, it can be construed as something negative if you say it. And I've had that issue come up quite a bit here lately. Maybe I'm just a cranky old man and my dark energy is far in control of the yin-yang circle, and I need to go meditate and spend some time getting my light energy back into balance when I'm dealing with others on the internet. Maybe that's true. I can't sit here and say that I don't have dark energy in me, because I do have dark energy in me. I always have dark energy in me. And we all have dark energy in us. And we all have light energy in us. And we need to we can't control someone else's energy balance. That's not our job. Our job is to control our own energy balance and to offer advice to those around us when we feel like we're in balance. Then we need to offer advice to others to help them get into balance. Now, they may not want to hear it. They may be totally uninterested in hearing it. But too much light energy is just as bad in the way as too much dark energy is. And that's the same thing that's going on every day in our fish tanks. We need to strive for balance, for a nature's balance in our fish tanks. We don't want the water too acidic. We don't want the water too base. We want it right in the range where our fish need it, or right in the range where our water comes out of the tap, mostly at that pH, and we are trying to maintain that pH, or we are fighting our water a little and mixing a certain amount of RO with it, or putting all RO in our tanks. We just need to balance. We don't need the water to be completely off its parameters, and we don't need the water to be perfect all the time. Yeah, it'd be great if it was perfect all the time, but we don't need that. That's not what fish need. What fish need is a steady water quality, a balanced water quality, where the negative and the positive are in balance with each other. They may swing a little bit back and forth, but we need to worry more about the balance than we do the the swings. Um, if you have a tank, um, you know Deb Tim, the Canadian girl. I love Deb Tim's stuff, but I keep telling her that her tanks are too clean. She cleans those tanks like she cleans her house. Those tanks are spotless, and it is conceivable that she can keep those fish alive in spotlessly clean tanks. If you look on the other side, which you could call the dark energy side, there are a lot of people that never vacuum their tanks. They always leave a layer of mulm on the bottom of their tanks. And if perchance one of their fish, a pair of their fish breed, those baby fish are going to have a great source of food right there close to them because they can eat microorganisms that live on that mulm in the tank. Now, I'm not talking about piles of detritus rotting away or dead carcasses of fish. That's the balance way the other way. That's dark balance taking over the whole circle. But having a spotless tank where no organism except the fish themselves survive is the light energy taking over the whole circle. And neither of those is right. It doesn't mean that you can't keep them alive that way. You can. But if Deb Tim were to happen to go away on vacation and her fish bred in the tank where she didn't get a chance to be there to catch the babies when they hatched, those babies are probably going to starve because there's nothing in there for them to eat off of. So to me, that's the white out of balance. You know, 6 inches of mulm on the bottom of a tank and rotten detritus and uneaten food, that's the dark out of balance. That's not what we need, way one way or way the other way. What we need is a balance between these two forces, between these two energies that will give our fish the best chance to survive. And I just think as people, as fish keepers, as members of groups, as members of clubs, as members of forums, as people that frequent live streams, that we need to go into it with that same balance in mind. Not everything so PC that there's no dark in the circle at all. Not everything so negative that there's no light in the circle at all, but a balance. And people that are not interested in maintaining that balance, people that are just there to disrupt and cause trouble and cause issues and try to make themselves feel better about themselves than anybody else because their advice is so much greater than anyone else's, those people are going to show up pretty quick. They're going to easily be banned from the groups or dealt with by moderators. You know, that's not an issue as far as how people that are really just evilly negative and just only there to disrupt and cause problems. If you come to this forum or you come to this chat and that's all you're here to do, my moderators are going to catch on pretty quick if they beat me to it. I'm not going to tolerate someone that's more interested in disrupting the discussion than they are in allowing the discussion to take its full course. You know, I may have a piece of advice that someone comes in and says, Dwayne, you're all wet. That's bad advice. And if we talk about it and I recognize, oh my gosh, I see now why I'm giving everybody really bad advice, then I can't knowingly do anything other than stand corrected and admit that I need to change how I am giving advice about that. That's not someone hating on me and just trying to make me feel like a lesser fish keeper than they are. That's someone with more experience in an area that I have less experience, actually teaching me through constructive criticism to learn what is the truth. Now, there's a million different ways to keep fish tanks. People manage to do it in ways that you would never dream of, in ways that go completely against common thought, in ways that defy normal rules and regulations about how you do something. But I just, those exceptions make the rule. It's just so important that we as people, that we as fish keepers, take constructive criticism for what it is intended for, and not be so thin-skinned that we react violently negatively about someone giving constructive criticism. You know, if we spend all of our time arguing about Terry's Tropical Tank says keeping fish is an art that we try to talk about as if it's a science. It is science. It's a pastime. In many cases, you're right, it's an art form. When you talk about people keeping gorgeous breeds of fish, when you talk about stellar setups of fish tanks, how gorgeous they are, how awe-inspiring they are. Yeah, it's an art form, but it really is a science. If you study the science of fish keeping, and I mean you can get degrees in it basically, if you really follow out the entire width and breadth of fish keeping, you'll realize that it just keeps opening up out from underneath you. There is no bottom to it. There is no end to it. No one ever is able to know it all. There are just too many differing areas, too many differing species, too many differing types of fish keeping, saltwater fish keeping, brackish fish keeping, freshwater fish keeping. No one person can master all of it. Now, there are people that are just excellent in all of it, but that doesn't mean that they've mastered every piece of knowledge that there is in fish keeping. And the science of fish keeping keeps gaining ground on us as fish keepers every day. There are more and more research projects being done. There are more and more behavioral studies being done than we can possibly keep track of, that we even know about. So yeah, fish keeping is a pastime. It's something we do as a hobby to fill our poor little empty lives with. And I hope you recognize that that's irony, that it's sarcasm. Our lives don't have to be empty for us to fill it with fish keeping. Fish keeping is a joy and a pleasure. It is also a pain and an expense and a lot of work. And that's the balance of fish keeping. The balance of fish keeping is that we need to recognize the expense, the labor, the joy, and the sheer wonder and awe of this hobby so that we can balance it out. So that we can say, maybe I don't need 100 tanks. Maybe having 100 tanks is starting to get to be such a chore doing water changes and dealing with feeding them that maybe I need to scale back to 60 fish tanks and push away a few of the species that I really don't have time to pay attention to anyway. And that's going to be different for everyone. The situation that they're in as far as their living arrangement, the situation that they're in as far as their own ability to come up with ways and methodologies to make it easier to handle large loads. You know, it's just as individual as everything else is. It's just what you can manage. Fish Tropic says lock into what you're good at. Yeah, I would second that statement. That, you know, when we're first growing up, when we're first reaching our, 16, 17, 18 years old, we need to spend some time as people figuring out what it is we love to do, what we're quote, quote, good at. And by the same token, we as fish keepers, by the time we've reached a medium stage of fish keeping where we're beginning to recognize how much knowledge there is out there that we need to assimilate in order to better our fish keeping, so that we begin to recognize how we get better as a fish keeper, how we improve. Well, it takes a while to get to that point. It takes a while to get to the place where you know what you're good at. And so it's like going to college. You're going to figure out what you really hate, that you really thought you were going to be a CPA when you went to school, but you figured out that you're actually an English major, and that's what you really love. And so you go about trying to get yourself in yeah, and Fish Tropics is talking about knowledge that you've discarded because it works against you. Yeah, that's, you know, a lot of the information that we receive from other fish keepers is anecdotal information. And what that means is that it's not the product of trial and error in a scientific sense, that it is the product of one person in their situation trying this and having it work for them. And that doesn't mean that your two situations are that similar. It doesn't mean that even if your situations are exactly similar, that it's going to work for you. It may not work for you. There may be some little thing that that person was doing. Terry's Tropical says your hobby will evolve constantly. You will get burned out on some things and excited about other things that you didn't think you would. Yeah, that's the joy of this hobby, really. I mean, I think the joy of fish keeping for me is breeding and watching the parents go through their breeding antics and how they raise fry, and the joy of knowing that you've taken a good enough care of your fish for them to breed and thrive, for the fry to survive. But that's the real exciting thing about the fish keeping hobby, is you're going to hit something. And I told a lot of young people that I know the same thing about college. you're going to go along, just kind of coasting, and all of a sudden you're going to hit a subject and it's just really going to resonate with you, and you're suddenly going to realize that your fate in life is to follow that subject right down the rat hole as far as it can possibly go. And it's the same thing with fish keeping. You'll be going along, and to use Fish Tropics example, you'll be going along and suddenly discover breeding snails is the thing that gives you the most pleasure in the entire hobby, and that you have figured out ways to do it in such a way that puts you head and shoulders above all other snail breeders in the world, if in only your own mind. But you will suddenly, the other things that you're keeping, the other breeding projects that you had going on, suddenly you'll be selling those off at the fish store to make more room for all of your snail breeding that you're doing. And I'm just using that as an example. If if you discover that that's what you're really best in the world at, and that's the thing that really rings your bell, that really makes you happy, that thrills you when you see a new cross of snails that you figured out how to breed that no one else could, uh, more power to you. Uh, that's really good. But I'm sorry that I've wasted a whole hour talking about balance, but I'm not sorry that I've wasted a whole hour talking about balance, because it's critical. It's critical in our planetary ecology. It's critical in our interpersonal relationships with others. It's critical in our own mental health. It's critical in our own fish keeping hobby. Balance is something that we'll probably never reach. We're never going to get everything perfectly balanced, but we're continually jockeying that dark energy and that negative energy a little bit, or maybe too much, but we're struggling to reach that balance. And if you can sit down and think about something until you can begin to recognize what is the dark energy of this topic and what is the light energy of this topic, and how am I at balancing it? What does that yin yang circle look like? Is it way more dark energy or way more light energy, or are they in closer balance? You will be far ahead when you're dealing in interpersonal relationships, when you're dealing with your fish keeping, when you're dealing with world ecology and what you have to say on that subject. And then look at your motivation. What is your motivation for saying that? If your motivation is evil or negative or hateful or hurtful in such a way that you're trying to make yourself feel better or hurt someone else, then don't bother wasting your breath saying it. Just shut up and don't say anything. The old adage was, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything. Well, that's true in a lot of ways. But when you start shaving it so closely that you can't even offer constructive criticism to someone else to help them understand the situation that they are dealing with, the problem that is occurring for them, then it's no longer a good adage. It's actually doing harm the other way. It's keeping people from learning, because no one can say, duh, you need to look at this. And you don't have to say that in a hateful way. You don't have to say that in a, I'm trying to stomp you down and make you feel like a worm. It doesn't have to be about that. The motivation should not be there at all. It should be trying to be helpful. Doesn't mean that sometimes even trying to be helpful, you won't do harm. But as long as people recognize that you're a decent person, that you know something about the topic that you're discussing, and that you're really offering what you think is helpful advice, don't be so damned thin-skinned that you can't take a little bit of constructive criticism. Because if you can't, you better just wad yourself up in a fetal ball and close the world out. Because constructive criticism is a part of life. It's that yin and yang going on. And yeah, it's striving for balance, but you are going to get negative, constructive criticism everywhere you go in the world. And it's how you deal with that. It's how you accept or deflect or deny or try to understand. Yeah, Fish Drops is saying more harm comes from help. Sometimes you need to learn the hard way. And believe me, we're all going to learn the hard way. There's no way that we're not going to learn the hard way. We may deny what we've learned. We may avoid admitting what we've learned, but we're going to learn it. Anyway, I'm going to shut it down before I say things that upset more people and cause me to lose more subscribers and have less support for my channel. I'm not trying to do harm here. I'm not trying to point fingers here. I'm not trying to make someone feel bad or someone feel good. I'm just trying to resist the idea that our interactions with each other have to be so politically correct that we cannot offer each other advice. And I'll just leave it on that topic. I think balance is something that's critical for all of us, all throughout our lives, throughout the ecology of the world that we're living in, throughout our interpersonal relationships, through our internet relationships, in every way there is. We need to not be so PC. All right. You guys have a good week. I hope this has helped someone. And I'm out.